It's Powerback time on the Gutsy Podcast, your 20-minute boost to reclaim and refocus your energy. Get ready to have bursts of clarity, a boost of confidence, and the practical steps you need to make gutsy moves forward. You've got big things to do, so let's get your power back. Trying to get things done when you live with an ADHD brain is kind of like going to the circus and needing to write a professional blog post while you're there. You want to focus, you need to focus, but the distractions are everywhere. Yes, our brains are wired a little bit differently, and that means getting to know what works for you and what doesn't. And when I switched from beating myself up because I can't and don't think in a neurotypical way, to getting to know, understanding, and working with my brain, my productivity and my inner peace went through the roof. Today, I'm going to share a couple of personal tips and experiences that have helped me to slow down, be able to focus, and to get things done. Now, there are a few things that you need to know as we dive into this episode together. First, I have no formal training or medical background in ADHD. The things that I'm sharing with you today are not medical advice, rather tools and tricks and techniques that have helped me to be able to pull my shit in and actually be able to move forward without feeling so stressed. So while I'm not an expert on paper, I am an expert with living with it. So take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Second, I'm self-diagnosed. It's been a challenge to get a proper diagnosis for just about anything in my medical history. And one thing that I know for sure is I know how I feel, I understand the symptoms, I do my own research, I self-educate, and then I support myself accordingly. So just in case you are listening to this and wondering, is this right for me? I don't technically have a diagnosis. I'm still kind of dabbling and wondering if this is for me. Listen, you came to this episode for a reason. Trust that intuition. Lastly, you got to do what works for you, friend. I'm not giving you these ideas and tips because I'm telling you that you have to go do them. I'm telling you what's worked for me. We all have individual needs. And that means we all have individual ways of doing things to support ourselves. So if it feels good and interesting, it's worth a shot. Give it a try. And if you're like, I've already done that shit doesn't work for me, then kick it out the back door and keep on moving. So first, to dig into this, let me help you maybe feel a little less alone, because if you live in a world with neurotypicals, meaning their brain functions a little bit more in a straight line, they tend to be able to focus a lot easier, and they tend to be able to work with the details and the size of things a little bit easier. However, our big, beautiful, creative, complex, neurodivergent brains, they don't do that stuff as easily. And I don't know about you, but I think one of the most challenging parts of this is the sheer amount of information that passes through my brain sometimes at any given moment. I mean, it is very, very likely that when I wake up in the morning, before I even open my eyes, I wake up mid-thought, as if I've already been having this conversation with myself or someone else. There's usually a song that I'm humming or singing in my mind. I'm not only thinking about what I need to do today, but I'm also thinking about something that I forgot to do last Thursday. I'm wondering what that sound is outside, all while I don't like the way that the blanket is touching my leg. And this is all happening simultaneously within a 5-second time frame. This is what I'm talking about when I say the sheer amount of information that passes through my brain at any given moment. And it can be really exhausting. Sometimes I would love to experience what it feels like to sit in silence, because I could probably count on one hand how many times in my life I've had absolutely zero dialogue happening in my mind. Besides this being annoying and exhausting, where it really becomes an issue is when I get into a place where it's time to be productive, where it's time to do things at work, things at home, when I'm out and about, and learning how to not necessarily silence my mind, because trying to do that is incredibly difficult. I've learned how to work with my mind instead of beating myself up, fighting myself, making myself feel bad because my brain works differently. I've learned to say, okay, this is clearly how we do things. How can I use this skill like a fucking superhero? Because the upside of this is that my brain creates a lot of information. It's incredibly creative. I can imagine a lot of stuff. I can balance a lot of things. You need to get some shit done? When I lock in and I get some shit done. I'm able to think outside the box and come up with new ideas. I can see things beyond where I'm standing. My empathy and ability to connect with other human beings is through the roof. I mean, there are some real cool superpowers with this too. So one thing that I recommend for you to do is first acknowledge what those superpowers are for you. How is having an ADHD brain actually supporting you and guiding you and helping you through your life? What opportunities has it created for you? What have you been able to do or go after or accomplish because of this? It is profoundly important and liberating to say, you know what? I can't change this about myself. It actually does a lot of great things for me. And if I learn how to work with it, the superpowers just grow. So here are a few things that I have found that help me personally. Again, take what you love, try what feels interesting, throw out what doesn't. Now, the first one is going to feel really like, seriously, Laura, that like, what else you got? But it is so simple. And honestly, that's what works. It's when we try to make things big and complicated and complex that our brains are just like, we already got too much shit going on. That's way too many more things. And so the first thing that just helps me to get locked back in and refocused is to write shit down. Half of the stress that you're experiencing is trying to remember everything, trying to like butterfly catch all these thoughts that are going through your brain 100 miles an hour. I do a lot of pausing. So when you start to hear and feel your brain like running, you know that feeling when it just starts to get a little bit out of control, like a tornado or Tasmanian devil. You got to be willing to catch it, like notice, oh, there we go again. And pause, stop. Because when you lean in, when you start running with it, it's like you are running with the bulls. And one of the most profound ways of taking your power back is to be able to recognize it and then stop. And in that stop moment, in that pause moment, write it down. What's going on? Are you getting information and downloads about something that you need to do at work? Is your grandma's cookie recipe all of a sudden popping in out of nowhere? Okay, let's write it down. You remember something that the kids need for school next week? Write it down. When you stop trying to force yourself to remember everything like some kind of invincible human being, you reclaim your time, your energy, and your momentum. Because now you're no longer trying to remember everything. Now you're like, okay, I've got all that, what all that was. I don't know where it came from, but here it is. It's safe on this piece of paper. And now I can come back to the thing that I was working on. I'm telling you, this is probably one of the most underrated tools. And you have it at your disposal, whether it's on a piece of paper, a sticky note, the notes section on your phone. I don't know about you, but my notes section is like the Wild West. Sometimes I read back through things and I'm like, I don't know what I was talking about with myself there, but if it's important, it'll come back. Otherwise, it's gone off into the ether and that's okay. Next thing that helps tremendously is turning off notifications and putting away your phone when you got to do stuff. I know you have heard this every which way. But are you doing it? Are you really dedicated to this? On my cell phone, I don't have any push notifications other than if somebody calls me or if somebody texts me. To get dinged and banged about Facebook updates and emails and this app this and sign up for that, that makes my ADHD brain absolutely insane. It's a consistent pull out of what you're trying to do. And it takes you out of it. And then it takes so long to come back into the thing. And you know as much as I do that something else is going to interject itself in between. So you're going to be working on your computer. You get the ding bang on your phone. You go to check that. Then you think about something. Then you go to the kitchen to get something. And then all of a sudden you're redoing the fucking drawer. And why? All because Facebook told you that Aunt Mary is going out to lunch today with her friend. So cleaning up the notifications on your phone is, in my opinion, non-negotiable. You have to be willing to reclaim your time because otherwise your technology is running you. And second is also being mindful of the notifications on your devices when you're doing things. So for instance, right now when I'm recording, I've got my phone on Do Not Disturb. It's face down, sitting across my desk. Also, side tip, I have found that if my phone is face down and away from me versus face up, there's something energetically about that tells me like it's okay to not be around that thing right now. I've also got all of my apps closed on my computer, and I have my email closed. Email is like a soul-sucking vortex, and if you don't control it, it's going to control you. When you know that it's time to focus on something, you have to create an atmosphere that supports you being able to do that. And I know for me personally, if I've got all this stuff like flashing, like, ooh, Laura, come over here. Ooh, what does this person have to say? Ooh, what's going on over here? It's gone. My productivity is fucking down the toilet. Then you get to the end of the day, you don't feel accomplished, then you've got more stuff to do tomorrow, and the stress stacks up. Having notifications on feels expected. I get that. But it's also a habit. And you can create a new habit that turns off those distractions for a limited period of time. I'm not saying you have to do it all day long unless you want to, and then more power to you. But when it's time to do something, to focus, to get something done, turn off the notifications. I'm telling you, it makes a world of a difference. And this kind of transitions into my next tip, which is prioritizing what you have to get done first. Remember earlier how we wrote some stuff down? This can really aid in being able to say, okay, what do I need to do today? And a lot of times there's this pressure of it's all important. It all needs to get done. So I don't know where to get started. So therefore I'm going to shut down. Trust me, I have spent many of times sitting in my office chair or sitting on my couch, scrolling the interweb instead of doing the thing that I need to do because there's so many things that my brain gets overwhelmed and then it shuts down and it just feels better to scroll. I give myself those moments, by the way. I'm not so hardcore where I'm like, oh, scrolling is terrible and you can't ever do that. Sometimes it's like a sigh of relief for my brain because I don't have to think about all the things. I can just watch funny trends or see what ridiculous things are happening on TikTok. However, that can't be all the time because otherwise nothing is going to get accomplished. I think some kind of tracking system is really beneficial, whether it's the calendar, whether it's some kind of project management tool, a to-do list, your notepad, your sticky notes, something that kind of houses the things. Because then what you can do is say, okay, what do I need to do first? Sometimes there truly are deadlines, something that's coming up, something that needs to be done first before something else can be done. So go through your items and say, okay, where do I need to focus first? And a lot of times it's not going to be the thing that you want to do. That's something else that I toggle back and forth with, like, oh, well, this needs to be done, but I really feel like doing this instead. And sometimes depending on, my creativity and or deadlines, I give myself the flexibility to be able to do those things first. However, sometimes I don't have the flexibility and something really does need my attention first. And so I trick myself a little bit and I'm like, okay, listen, Laura, if you do this task first, then the rest of the day, you can let your brain do whatever it feels like doing next. It's like a little reward and it works. And if you look at this list and you're like, everything is important, everything is a priority, and everything feels like it's on fire, where do you start? What do you do first? Well, I'm a big fan of starting with the thing that is putting the most pressure on you. Something that you've been worrying about more or thinking about more or is taking up more capacity in your world, get that thing done. Or the other option here is to lean in and what do I really feel like doing? What feels interesting? What do I feel drawn to do? I know, especially if a creative part of my brain is really firing, I know that if I lean into that and use it, it gets done pretty efficiently and I can come up with some pretty cool shit. Lastly, is all about that focused time. I like to think about what can I go all in for and for how long do I want to dedicate to doing it. Let's say you've got laundry that has been piling on top of piles. It can feel really overwhelming to look at all of that. And so if we just shut the door, it's out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't get done. But what if you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go all in on this for the next 20 minutes. You can set a timer, maybe put on a playlist that makes you feel awesome. Personally, when I really need to get some shit done, I put on the Korn Pandora station and rock out to get my stuff done. And then you say, okay, I don't have to do all of this right now, but I'm going to go all in for the next 20 minutes and see what works. And if that still feels overwhelming, you know what? What if I start with hanging up these 2 shirts? What if I start with separating things? This idea of breaking things down into smaller bite-sized pieces helps it to feel more manageable, and it allows you to actually do it, to be able to move forward with it. And guess what? When your 20-minute timer, your 30-minute timer, your 1-hour timer, you get to set it. Whenever that goes off, you get to be finished. Now, I'll tell you, it's kind of funny because once you get started and you get in the thing, it's way easier to stay in the thing. And so I've been in that situation with the laundry before where it's like, okay, the timer went off or the song is done, but you know what? I'm halfway done. And now I'm energized. Now I'm focused. Now I see the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is really empowering. If you get that sense and you have the time, just see it through. Give yourself the permission and the ability to finish the task. Because most of the energy and the figuring things out and the chaos in the mind came from starting. And now that you've created momentum, now that you've started, now that you're doing the thing, it's easier to stay in it and finish it. So pair the idea of an all-in time block with breaking things down into smaller actions. That combination, paired with a really good playlist, is almost always a recipe for awesomeness. These handful of things that I've shared with you today have been incredibly successful for me. And I will also say that some days are better than others. Some days my brain is more sharp, more focused, more in the mood to do things. And other days, my gosh, it's like trying to put a toddler that is pissed off that needs a snack and a nap inside of a car seat. So practicing self-compassion with yourself. No 2 days are the same. I mean, we're also cyclical beings. So there is a hormonal cycle that we are following. There's a moon cycle that we are following. There are energies all around and within us. And remember that rest days, those are productive too. You don't always have to be on and doing and getting things done and getting things accomplished. Slow down and celebrate your victories, whether you were able to put the laundry away today, maybe you were able to send those emails or make the phone calls that you've been putting off, or maybe you finished a project that's been sitting around and now it's done. Celebrating your milestones, recognizing what's working for you, and then giving yourself permission to go with your ebbs and flows. Our brains, you and I, they're wired differently, which means that we do things differently and we think things differently. And we can't expect to function and thrive in a world that functions in a straight line. So the next time you're feeling like you're at a circus and it's time to write a professional blog post, pop in your earbuds, handle what you need to handle, and then enjoy the show. If you enjoy these kind of short nuggets of information, really content-rich, actionable ways for you to make your next move, to get clarity, to build confidence, to get shit done, to make your next gutsy move, to improve your life, then you will absolutely love it inside the Gutsy Collective. In case you're not familiar, that is my community for driven women. These are the women that are focused on personal and professional growth. They're learning how to get out of their own way and make the gutsy moves that change their life. And we do this together, collectively, through audio lessons, accountability check-ins, group challenges, guest experts, deep, rich, relatable content that actually helps you to move forward. If you're kind of intrigued and want to check it out, go to lauraora.com, where you can sign up for a free 2-week trial, no strings attached. You can come in, take a couple of lessons, interact with the group, and see what possibilities are ahead of you. And lastly, if you know someone in your world that has ADHD or struggles with being able to focus and get things done, forward them this episode. The more we talk about our shared experiences and our shared tools and resources, the more productive, happier, and more fulfilled that we all get to be together. I am at that Laura Ora on all social platforms, and until I see you next time, stay gutsy.